If you enjoy what you hear here today, please consider supporting me on my Patreon page. Every dollar helps, and you get to see content that you won't see here. Chapter 2. Writer's Block. Rosemary ran to the ever-free forest as quickly as her hooves would let her. Oppression oozed from every shadow, taunting her and willing her to fall. The evil presence that had been following her was hot on her heels. She could feel it in every fiber of her being. Even though the only sounds being made were the hoofsteps of her furious, terrified running, she knew that she was not alone. Her heart was hammering to oblivion in her chest, each beat sending adrenaline coursing through her veins and forcing her to ignore her fatigue, because if she made just one wrong move, just one small slip, she had no doubts that she would never find the one she was looking for. As she tore through the forest, she burst through a wall of foliage blocking her path and found herself in a clearing. But she wasn't alone, for in the clearing, there stood The pony who was sitting by the pond chewed on his lower lip, racking his brain for a suitable creature to give the best impact for his story. He thought of using a manticore or a cockatrice, but those were definitely too overused. He toyed with the idea of a pale, menacing Vrykalakas, but decided that it was too obscure. Maybe a nice, terrifying Naga or Gorgon. No, that wouldn't work. The setting wasn't right. Those types of monsters were found in caves or swamps, not forests. A Sphinx? Same problem. Those are from the desert. Dragon? Too big. An imp? Too small. A ghost? Too subtle. Axe-wielding bloodthirsty ogre? Not subtle enough. After some thought, the pony dipped his quill in the inkwell and continued writing. For in the clearing was a giant pony-eating cookie with huge razor-sharp teeth made of peanuts and terrifying dark-as-night eyes made of chocolate chips. Rosemary stopped in her tracks at the sight of the vicious treat and sighed. She gave off a frustrated groan and said,
"Seriously? This is the best you can do? A bloody 8-foot-tall cookie? Am I supposed to be scared of this? I don't know what's worse, the fact that you're writing this garbage or that you thought any pony would find this scary. I'm done with this. Call me when you're ready to stop picking your nose and be a real writer."
And with that, Rosemary stormed off. Silver Quill stared at the page he was writing on, and then looked at the quill held in his telekinetic grasp, and then back at the page. He sighed heavily, put his quill on the grass, and crumpled up the paper so that it could join its friends in the pile of terrible plot lines. When the character you're writing about starts insulting you, then you know you have a problem, he muttered under his breath.
"A problem? Art thou experiencing difficulty with something, young Silver Quill?"
said a voice from behind him. Silver instantly knew who it was, as there was only one pony in Equestria who spoke in such a manner. Silver Quill sighed. He'd been doing a lot of that lately, and turned around. "Why, Princess," he said with a small smile. "I was wondering if I would see you this lovely night." Princess Luna grinned and flicked her tail in pride at his compliment of her creation. She walked up to stand next to him.
"You know, we think that your name should be Silver Tongue, what with how easily you are able to sling compliments out."
She gave him a sideways glance as she sat next to him with an amused smile.
"But, if thou thinkest that we will be distracted so easily, thou hast another thing coming. Now what is it that ails you?"
Silver Quill looked at the pond and thought for a moment. He didn't know what to tell the Princess of the Night, or if she would understand his problem. But he decided that it wouldn't hurt to at least get her opinion. "What ails me, Princess, is a curse of the most devious kind. One that prevents me from doing the one thing that I love most in this world and refuses to let me forget it." The princess's eyes widened as she brought a graceful hoof to her mouth.
"Oh my goodness! that thou wast suffering so much. We had no idea. Tell us, what is the name of this curse? We, as old as we are, have never heard of such a thing.
Princess Luna's eyes shone with concern. Silverquill couldn't help but chuckle at her innocent face. He knew he shouldn't, but sometimes it was hard not to take advantage of her naivete. Even though he knew that she was millennia old, it was hard to remember that sometimes. Don't worry, Princess. Just an aggravating case of writer's block. Nothing serious. Concern turned into confusion as Luna pondered his words.
We do not understand. What is this writer's block thou speaketh of?
It was no surprise that the princess didn't know what he was talking about. She had only been released from her lunar banishment slightly over a year ago. Writer's block, Silverquill explained, is when a writer, like myself, is incapable of finding the right inspiration or motivation to write. Usually I have no problem with writing, but this has been going on for a month now. Even being in a place that has always put me in the right state of mind to write is of no help. Princess Luna looked around. They were sitting by a small pond connected to a thin river. Wildflowers graced the edges of the pond and dotted the grass around them, giving the area an enticingly sweet scent. Surrounding them were tall pine trees, cloaked in shadows that only allowed some pony to see a few meters past them, but no more. It was in a small, forested area in Canterlot, one that was never visited much because it was pretty out of the way. It was quite a scene, but what really topped it off was the moon and starlight that shone from the night sky. It painted the area with a mesmerizing mist of gentle white light, and it was the perfect scene to get his creative juices flowing. And it had only become more perfect once the Princess of the Night returned and started to raise the moon her way. Realization dawned on Princess Luna.
Ah, now we understand. So this is why we always find you here lost in thought. We had wondered why thou was always in this spot. Dost thou truly enjoy the night this much?
Silver knew that, while she was curious, she was also fishing for some of his compliments that she loved so much. He decided to humor her. I truly do, Princess. I've always felt a connection to the night. The tranquility, the beauty, the sights and sounds. They've always endeared themselves to me. Celestia did a marvelous job managing the night in your absence, but since you've returned to Equestria, its splendor has increased tenfold. Even though he was buttering it up for the sake of pleasing her, he was pretty much telling her the truth. He always did love the night, and for all those reasons. A delighted smile appeared on Luna's face. She ruffled her wings proudly and sat up a little straighter to lift her head higher. Princess Celestia was showered with compliments every day, but Luna rarely got such treatment, since every pony was usually asleep when she raised the moon. Because of this, Silver had learned, even the smallest compliment would please her immensely.
Well, we are certainly glad that thou thinkest so. We would never have met thou otherwise.
Silver nodded, thinking back to when they had first spoke. It had been several months since the princess's return. He had been sitting in this very spot, and she had asked him why he was always sitting here writing. She had been observing him for some time, and he was getting the suspicion that she wanted to approach him, but didn't know how. He answered lightly, saying that he was always most comfortable at night, and it was easiest for him to write here. Since then, she had been visiting him in this same spot every once in a while, and they had become fast friends. Once Princess Luna finished reveling in his compliment, she turned to Silverquill and asked,
Wouldst thou like my advice, Silverquill?
He smiled warmly at her and said, I most certainly would, Princess. Luna looked at him pointedly and said,
Firstly, thou ought to cease addressing us as Princess. We are friends, so thou shalt address us by our name.
Silverquill chuckled, and when he realized that she was waiting for an answer from him, he replied with, I'll do that, Luna. Luna gave him a smile and nodded in satisfaction.
Secondly,
she continued,
The root of the problem is quite easy for us to see. The fact of the matter, young Silver Quill, is that you are overworked.
Silver digested her words, thinking about the past few weeks and trying to figure out if he felt overworked or not. He didn't think so. He hadn't even been able to get any work done because of this writer's block. He made his thoughts known. No, I don't think that's it, Luna. I don't feel overworked in the slightest. Luna didn't look convinced. She looked at him more closely and said,
Thou may not be aware, but we were a musician once, a long time ago. We played violin and composed our own music. We were quite skilled at it too, and we remember on several occasions feeling very similar as thou does.
He was quite taken aback at this revelation, and had no idea Luna had ever been a musician. But after he thought about it for a second, it really shouldn't have come to much of a surprise, he realized. When one is ageless, entertainment is the most precious thing one has. You're a musician? What pieces have you made? Why'd you stop? Frankly, Silver was more interested in the fact that she was a musician than he was in her knowing what was wrong with him. Silver Quill highly respected musicians, mainly because his and their crafts were so similar, yet still so different. Luna giggled.
Well, art thou familiar with Lullaby of the Elders or Symphony of Serenity? Or what about Starlight Sonata?
Silver Quill slowly nodded. Not only was he familiar with all of those songs, nearly every pony in Equestria was. Well, yes, he replied. But the composer of those songs is unknown, has been for centuries. Luna laughed at that, and adopted another expression of smug pride.
Not so unknown, we would think, as thou only started calling the composer by her first name mere moments ago.
Silver Quill found his mouth hanging open, and quickly closed it with a sharp crack of his jaws. He violently shook his head in order to regain his wits. Well, this is quite surprising. You weren't lying when you said you were skilled. But why did you stop? Another one of her self-satisfied smiles was quickly replaced with one of regret and discomfort.
Unfortunately, it wasn't our choice to cease with our music making. But our banishment to the moon gave us very little time to pack a carry-on bag, if thou understands our meaning.
Silver Quill winced at his own stupidity. Of course, that was why. What else could it have been? Why did he have to make an insensitive ass out of himself? Ah, right. I'm sorry. Luna looked down at her companion, who she could easily tell was feeling guilty for bringing up such unpleasant memories. Some warmth spread through her, and she found herself thinking that it was a good thing she worked up the courage to speak to him when she first did.
No worries, young Silver Quill. We have come to accept our actions and take little discomfort in discussing them. The more important thing right now is the issue of your so-called writer's block. As we said, it is due to you being overworked. We have experienced it before, when we were struggling to compose our music, and there is only one cure for it.
Silver Quill sighed yet again, fearing that he knew where this was going. But he knew that Luna was waiting for him to ask her what the only cure for his writer's block was, and decided that he would have some fun with her and be completely silent. And with that, the two ponies sat by the pond in complete silence, with the only sounds being those of the nightlife around them and the ripples of the pond. Luna waited for 1 minute, which then stretched on to 2 minutes. Silver Quill could see out of the corner of his eye that she was getting antsy, shifting her position and sending frequent glances his way. 2 minutes eventually turned to 3, and Silver was finding it increasingly difficult to keep the smile from his face as Luna got more and more impatient. 3 minutes had passed into 4, and Luna had given up nearly all pretense of subtlety and decided to just sit and stare right at him. And Silver just sat stone still, continuing to stare straight ahead. It was in the 5th minute that his composure finally cracked. Luna let out a barely perceptible in her eagerness to impress him with her knowledge, and that briefly broke his focus and made him release a barely suppressed laugh. But apparently it was enough.
Oh, confound it! Thou wert doing that on purpose!
Silverquill couldn't help but give a loud laugh at Luna's expression, a blend of discontent and embarrassment, perfectly mixed for the maximum amount of hilarity. When Princess Luna saw that she was being laughed at, she defiantly crossed her front legs in front of her and turned her nose away from Silver with a royal, All right, my apologies, Luna, Silverquill said with the barest hint of a smile still remaining in his attempts to placate her. Would you please tell me what it is that I need to get rid of this problem of mine? Luna tried to show that she was not to be so easily won over, but Silverquill knew better. He saw the crinkle around her eyes that showed she found it just as amusing as he did, and the slightly upturned lips left nothing to the imagination. After a few more seconds of pretending to think about it, she finally said,
All right, young Silverquill, we will tell you, although thou shouldst consider thyself lucky.
She uncrossed her hooves and looked him in the eye.
The only solution to this, that thou has, is to take a brief rest from thy work, to let thy mind be free of the strain it takes from searching for inspiration at every waking moment, to take time off and let thyself enjoy life simply, and without hindrances. Dost thou understand this?
Silverquill nodded. It was as he expected. Well, I suppose a few days or so of not thinking about writing could do no harm. Guess I'll just walk around the city, go to the parts I've never been to before. Luna shook her head and looked at him imploringly.
Oh, no, young Silverquill. Thou must take much more than just a few days off. It must be at least a few weeks, and thou most certainly can't stay in Canterlot during your time off. Well, it is a wonderful city. Thou needest to go somewhere quieter, somewhere more quaint, and without all of the hectic busyness that seems so abundant in Canterlot.
Silverquill groaned. A few weeks? That was a lot longer than he was willing to stay still for. He was used to always being busy, always having things to do, right? Dropping everything now and taking such a long vacation would be agonizing. He just wouldn't know what to do with himself. A few weeks. Luna, don't you think that's a tad bit extreme? Luna shot him a stern glance, which made him sit up a little straighter, eerily similar to the way that the teachers at his old school could make someone confess anything or correct any mistake without hesitation, with just one look.
Believe us, young Silverquill, it would take at least a week for thou to be fully rid of thy problem. Probably more.
Silver accepted defeat as he said, If you insist, Luna. But the unfortunate truth is, I don't know where to go. As much as I want to leave Canterlot and go out and see the world, I've only been out of the city a few times. And even then, the city walls were a hoof step away. And besides, knowing me, I'd be beside myself with boredom. What could I possibly do in a smaller town other than write? Luna gave him a broad, yet somewhat disconcerting smile.
Do not trouble thyself with the little details, young Silverquill, for we know the perfect place for thy to take a brief holiday at. And as for thy concerns of being bored, thy has nothing to worry about.
Luna laughed in a suspiciously evil-sounding way that made Silverquill fear for his future. What in the world have I just gotten myself into? He muttered. Meanwhile, the Princess of the Night sat next to him, laughing.